Yeah, so we have 4 lovely panelists. So I will give you the mic, and you can maybe a few words of introduction, those who haven't talked today yet.
Yes, hello, my name is Vaiva Mashadlauskane. I'm a representative from Sorainen. I'm in charge of transport law service group. So I will basically cover the legal aspects of this activity.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Modesta Gusarovienė, Municipal Enterprise Suteikimo paslaugos Director. And our company is responsible for all transportation system in Vilnius City. It's including public transport, traffic management, and all parking organizing.
Hi, I'm Lucas, and I'm the head of the marketing for the company SAVY, which is providing a stylish and convenient urban mobility solution.
Okay, thank you so much. So basically the key questions that we want to cover today are challenges for sharing economy companies to enter the market, regulation issues, which we haven't been covered mainly from financial point of view, so maybe we can discuss more topics here on the regulation side. Also, market reactions for new types of services. So basically these are the things I would like to talk about. And first question is to Alexander, basically. I would like to mainly ask you what are the main regulatory or other issues when you are entering markets with Uber services, and maybe you have some good or maybe bad examples how these issues can be solved, basically when talking to regulatory bodies or municipalities, and etc.
Yeah, I think the regulatory question for us is, of course, complicated because what you find with transportation law is it's incredibly fragmented across countries. So even across the European Union, there are huge differences in terms of the ways that countries and municipalities regulate their transport. So, we take these things very seriously. There's some big question that we study before we decide to launch in a market. But to be honest, I think the most important thing is a really proactive and positive dialogue with policymakers and with external stakeholders. So, for example, the example I showed earlier in Vilnius, we really made an effort to reach out to as many people as possible here. And that's something that we try to do now everywhere that we launch. And I think there was a nice quote from an Australian lawmaker, I think, around last year, which was that once the genie is out of the bottle, when it comes to Uber and ride sharing, it's very difficult to get the genie back in. And I think that's true. And I think that the good thing about working with policymakers and regulators is they realize that the sharing economy is here to stay, and it's a very positive development for their constituents. So they're usually very happy to work with us on finding the best way to regulate it. Okay,
I would like to ask Lucas a very similar question. Basically, when you've entered the market, are there any regulatory issues that you kind of were facing? Were there any problems, and what was the basically connection with you and municipality? Do you have any issues still ongoing I would like to address?
Actually, talking about the laws, we had no restrictions because basically we are more advanced product of the current. So current industry is already regularized by the laws. So the same laws apply for us. And it's basically we needed just the allowance from the municipality to start our service. So it was quite easy and convenient.
Okay, so I'm sure there are more issues we can talk about what municipality can do for this kind of business, so we can address these questions a bit later. So I would like to then ask Modesta, basically, because how we see sharing economy, sometimes we can see it both ways. We can see it as a threat to something which is already there, like public transportation system or old businesses, or we can see it as an opportunity. So this is really both ways to see it. So how basically you, as a representative of public transportation, how do you see sharing economy services, especially in the sector of transportation? Do you see that as a threat, or do you see it as something you can really work with and maybe improve the system even more?
Yes, thank you for the question. It's very discussion about that, about sharing economy, about car sharing and such initiatives like Uber or something. But my personal opinion is that now in Vilnius we have transport problems, yes? And in all other world cities, in big cities, there are congestions, traffic jams, parking problems, and Vilnius is not different from them, and very big problems we have at the peak hours with congestions, and we had analyses that approximately 1.2 person sits in the one car. So we have in peak hours a lot of empty seats in the streets. So new initiatives like sharing economy, Uber or car sharing or carpooling, bike sharing, it's very good for us because it is an opportunity to reduce the traffic jams, air pollution, and to save environment. What will be impact of Uber or other initiatives? We don't see yet, because in Vilnius Uber is a few months, so it doesn't impact very much in transport system. But we are looking at other cities where the Uber is, and we are learning experiences and looking for advantages and disadvantages of that.
Okay, thank you so much. Vaiva, I would like to ask basically you then, because we were talking a lot today about legal framework and regulation. So first of all, I would like to address you the question which is rather general. So it's also with the regulation, it's a big question how regulators and how we're going to proceed with regulation. Is it that sharing economy companies are going to try to be squeezed in a already framework or regulation which is right now, or maybe regulation is going to change itself, adapting to the new technology, to the sharing economy? So how do you see, what is the direction, basically, maybe not only Lithuania, maybe in some other countries or worldwide, what is the direction the regulation is going to go forward? Is it going to improve or change or adapt, or is it going to be that shared economy activities are just going to be squeezed into the current framework? How do you see this problem?
Okay, thank you. I guess that answer is the most annoying you can receive from the lawyer. It depends.
Well, but economists also say that.
I know it's a very annoying phrase, but just to illustrate how it depends in case of transportation, as Lucas has indicated correctly, for, let's say, car sharing, nothing has to be changed. And car lease, temporary car lease, has been there for quite a lot of time. And they can easily fit into the current existing framework and adapt it according to the new technologies. Whereas for public transportation, it may sound as a joke, but basically the shared economy in public transportation is forbidden, because if you transfer your ticket for the bus to another passenger, you're subject to administrative fine, I guess. Whereas for Uber and this type of companies, the current legal framework isn't sufficient, and it needs not to be revolutionized, but perhaps fine-tuned to make it adapted in order to make this type of business operate in Lithuania. So answering your question, how the regulation would turn in Lithuania and elsewhere, so most probably the regulator has to see what is the type of activities and to see what is the existing framework at the given time, and then to see what is the best model to accommodate it and to make it actually work.
Okay, and similar question I actually would like to ask Alexander, you too, because this is also, we have in different countries, we've seen a lot of clashes basically with the old business and Uber, and they were kind of serious clashes. In some cases, Uber is even banned because it is not somehow fitting the current system. There are lots of politicians who see sharing economy services and Uber sometimes as a threat. So Hillary Clinton said, or kind of that Uber is kind of a race to the bottom. I think she once said that it is stripping away social protection, workers' rights, and all these kind of things. So how would you see how the regulation is going to progress, and what would you answer to someone who would say, well, it's just a rush to the bottom because you cannot regulate them, and it's going to, rip away our social protection or something like that.
Yeah, I think, look, I think apart from the genie in a bottle quote that I offered earlier, I think the most important thing to remember here is, and it's a very simple idea, people just like using Uber. And that goes for both the riders who use it on a daily basis, but also, our driver partners. 81%, we surveyed them, and 81% they said they love driving for Uber, and I think 90% of them, or 95 actually, said that they really appreciate the flexibility that using the Uber platform affords them, in the sense that they don't have set working hours or shifts, or they don't have somebody telling them what time they have to work and what time they have to stop. So the people love it. And just to provide a little context with a different number, we're doing 5 million trips a day now, worldwide, 5 million, right? So I think in my experience, launching this product around Central Eastern Europe and the regulatory conversations that I've been involved in this region, I would say they've almost always been extremely positive. And I would say the reception has overall been extremely positive. And I think, with anything that's new and any idea that changes the status quo, there's always going to be some apprehension, there are always going to be some questions, and we appreciate that. And that's part of the reason why active discussion is the best way forward. But I think that the numbers speak for themselves. I mean, 5 million trips a day, huge approval ratings on both sides. I think that it's pretty clear that the sharing economy isn't going to go away anytime soon.
Okay, thank you so much. Then, I would like to go back to Lucas now. Basically, I think the model that you are kind of presenting, what you try to do is you're trying to change the mindset of the people. You want to really say that you do not really need to own the car. And for this mindset to change, you need to do something, and maybe there are some ways, because you need to understand that if for someone to get rid of the car, he really needs to know that I'm going to be served not only in the places where, for example, car sharing services on Uber works, but really in some also remote places of Vilnius. For example, I live in Kalnėnai, which is, I know that there is one car sharing, but I still would have to go there by bus, for example. So for me to kind of get rid of my car, I would need to understand that I would be conveniently can go to this car sharing place. So maybe the thing, what I'm trying to get, and what my question is, in order to change the mindset of people, maybe there are ways how, for example, private and public transportation systems can combine each other in order for people to be able to kind of get rid of the cars. That's what we want to do. So do you have any comment about this?
Actually, there was a study made which stated that people actually do not need cars. They only simply need the convenience of the car getting from point A to the point B. So I believe that in order to educate people to get rid of the cars, we simply need to create the convenient system, availability of the various different transport solutions, and monetary incentive. So once you offer these three things, you create the mesh of the different types of mobility sources. I think the users will come to this network and they will get rid of their cars. So did I answer your question?
Well, I think so, and I think Modesta maybe
I can comment some sentences about that. In all transport system, we don't use separate systems. We don't use public transport, only public transport. Walking, biking, and car sharing also should be in one common system. Yes, and the trip for your example could be you can go by public transport and then to change to car sharing or so on. And this multimodal trip planning should be in the one common planning system. And now the city is preparing a sustainable urban mobility plan, and in which is it should be analyze all systems, including car sharing and bike sharing and carpooling in all systems, including all parking and public transportation. So it is a common system services in mobility world, not in only some separate.
Okay. Sure.
I think we simply need to understand that we are not fighting with each other, for example, car sharing against the public transportation or car sharing against the Uber. We are fighting to show the people that you don't need to own cars. And I believe that we have such understanding here in Vilnius, so I believe shortly we will see some great results.
Okay. Coming back to Vaiva, so basically, now also quite general question. So sharing economy is coming and is going to stay, and the genie is out of the bottle, basically. We all know that because we love cell phones and we love quick services and we love convenient services. So, and of course, the way it is going to be developing is going to be dependent on how it's going to be regulated. So, your general, what is when having current legal base of Lithuania, where do you think that there are the biggest holes, basically, in Lithuanian legal regulation, while taking all of the sectors, if you can comment, in order for Lithuania to be attractive for these kind of services? I don't know if it's transport, or it's finance, or it's like taxing problems. What are the biggest, maybe, things that we need to do still in Lithuania from the legal point of view?
Good question, actually. The answer in one word would be policy, because irrespective of the field where the sharing economy operates, the unique policy within the country is what actually counts, what brings us legal certainty, and what gives the business expectations, right expectations on what they may encounter when launching in this particular country. So if we have some good examples in the finance sector, which was discussed earlier today, in the field of transport, we still lack this certainty. And even though some of the activities there aren't illegal, they are operating in, so to say, gray zone. And it mostly depends on the political will or the policy on how this particular field will be regulated in the future. So what is really needed is the unified policy in all the sectors. And this also perhaps aims at the EU level. If EU member states are giving with sort of guidelines where basic principles or minimum requirements are put forward, it would give a lot of more clarity to this regard. Then the next question which is at stake here when discussing this matter is how to draw the line where the peer-to-peer platforms end and where the business starts. Again, it depends on the business model and on the activity, but these two elements, that clear boundaries and policy, would make our lives much easier, I guess. Okay,
thank you. I have one more question for Alexander, because the way I see that sometimes the regulation discussion when it is going on, I see that sometimes the customers themselves, they're left out of the discussion. Sometimes it's the discussion is going on between regulators, the business that are already in place, and some newcomers. And sometimes consumers do not have the way to voice their opinion. Do you think there are ways on how we can enable consumer to say what he really prefers, maybe to have a bigger voice in how the sharing economy services should be regulated? Because in the end, customer should be the king. He has to have the vote in how the services are going to be regulated. So do you have any good experience, good examples of that? And do you think the customer can be heard more in this discussion?
Yeah, it's like that old chestnut, right? I mean, getting people involved in the political process, right? I mean, not only are we talking about getting them involved in pieces of obscure policy like transportation policy, but just getting them to vote is difficult enough in most places, right? So it's tough, I think, is the answer. And I think that, you know, I could give you a platitude, like I would encourage everybody to get involved in the political process and, you know, send an email to their local representative, which I think is a good idea. But, you know, I don't honestly have an answer to what the best way is to encourage people to get involved is. As far as good examples go, I think we've done some good work in terms of mobilizing a support base from, you know, sort of loyal customers, both on the rider and driver partner side in the past. I think, you know, we've done quite a lot of petitions. I think if you Google sort of Uber and petition, you'll see a lot of petitions come up where we faced opposition, sort of knee-jerk reactions from regulators in certain places, which we've successfully at least tried to sort of fight with the support of our sort of customer base. So I think it can be done, and I think one good way to do it, or at least one thing that helped us, is just using the same technology to enable people to do it in a more easy sort of way, right? So if they don't actually have to pick up the phone themselves, or they don't actually have to find the email address of the person they have to email and draft an email, it makes it easier for them to get involved. So, you know, we set up a website where we sort of house these petitions, and I think that's been really successful.
Okay, and I still have some questions, but I'm going to be left some time for the questions from the audience, so please, if you have any ideas, I'll be welcoming them in just a few minutes. I would like to ask some similar question to Modesta and to Lucas. Basically, we agree that in order for convenience to be there, municipality and companies have to work together. So maybe we can, there are things, for example, from Lucas' point of view, from your business, what can be done from the municipality point of view for your business to be like flourishing and growing faster? Or maybe on the other side, there are some things that companies operating in car sharing can be done from their point of view in order for the municipality to be kind of more open for the discussion. So maybe there are things we can exchange here that are going to be valuable for the future of Vilnius.
Actually, from our perspective, the ideal actions would be just waiving the parking prices for us. That's like, I'm going to go straight forward, and allowance of the parking lanes. So, because at the moment we are contributing together and we are creating the car sharing stops according to the network of the public transportation in Vilnius, and so simply just we ask for two things, but yeah, things needs to be done, and we are really young business in Vilnius. We are, despite the fact that we were operating for over 3 years, we started to grow and we created the product that Vilnius citizens actually want to use only last year in May. So we are quite, despite the fact that we are running for 3 years, we are quite young product still.
So regarding the parking prices, till last year we had 50% discount for car sharing parking in the city center. Now we have a monthly price for one car in all zones of parking, and I think it's a discussion, and the life is going on, and we are, yeah, it's very changing very fast all, and we have to discuss and to share our experiences in that. Talking about special lanes for public transport. Now we have special lanes for public transport, and in this lane can be allowed for electric cars, for cars with 4 and plus persons. But now we have no control with that, and we have problems in our special lanes for public transport. And I think, but it is, we're talking with some IT specialists, and now we are trying video cameras to fixing bad guys. So maybe it's discussion for that. When we will solve the control problem, so we will
Okay, so it's time for questions from the audience, if there are any. I'd like to. Okay, so there is one and two questions. So is there a microphone? Three. Okay, so 1, 2, 3.
Hello, I'm Justinas, and what I actually wanted to ask is about the future of all this mobility and transportation. You all have a common vision for what you seek in the future, but there was one picture earlier in the presentations about the jams, and I wanted to ask where is the reason about the jams, whether it's on the streets like right now, or when with your services, I mean all of your services, Uber, CityB, public transportation, there will be some actual need of the transportation at the right moment. I mean, right now we sit in the city jams, but in the future I see we wait for a CityB car or wait for a Uber car. That's the same jam. I mean, the cycles goes on, just in the different approach.
Okay, so maybe we can listen to all the questions and then we'll go through all. And okay, so there is one here, one more.
Yeah, it would be a simple question, maybe from a different domain, but I would like to know the panelists' view in that. How to get rid of cars in Lithuania, because it seems to be like a cultural thing that every Lithuanian family has 3 cars. And you know, you guys are solving this problem, Uber and CityB, that's a good thing. But then maybe taxation could help. I mean, does anyone have a view on like taxing cars? Maybe that's something, or any other ideas?
Okay. And there is one more there, and then we can go and answer them. I'm going to be reminding of the contents.
Yeah, my main question is to Modesta. You mentioned, and I like the idea that you want to integrate actually all the services, the Uber, the CityB, and the public services now. But to use that, people have to have some sort of tool. Are you thinking about some sort of like technological tool for users to use and to, for example, to calculate the trip that it's convenient for Vytautas to take public transport to CityB and then maybe a bicycle from some point?
Okay, so maybe we can start from this question if you don't mind, and then we can go answering others.
Yes, we have good experience in that case when we, in our smartphone or in a website, you can plan your trip and it's opportunity to see when is bike sharing points. And now we are going in this year to change our website to introducing also car sharing and bike sharing points with some database where you can live, when you can try a multimodal trip with different types of transportation. It's in plans our. I don't know when it starts, but we are planning this year to
Okay, so we can maybe go through all the 3 panelists answering these first 2 questions. The first one was maybe you have a vision on the future in transportation. Is that the case? Right now we have traffic jams, but maybe we'll have the same traffic jams, just car sharing traffic jams. What is your view on that? That was the first question. I hope I get it right. The second question was about how to get rid of cars, because Lithuanians really like to own things, not only cars, but also houses. I think we're one of the highest percentage of home and flat ownage in the whole Europe. So we like to own things because we know they can grasp to the asset. So how to get rid of of people wanting to want cars? So basically, if any of the panelists have, we can go through the circle.
Okay, yeah, maybe I can go first. So I think the idea of like traffic jams with ride-sharing vehicles, like I think it sounds plausible, but in a way, I guess what I would want you guys to think of is think of ride-sharing as an incredibly simple idea, right? Now at this point in time, let's say I have a car and you have a car, right? We both have cars, and we both need to get to work in the morning. Like it just has to happen, right? So we both have a choice. We either both hop in our cars and go to work this morning, or For example, perhaps I decide that before I go to work, I want to spend an hour making a little bit of extra money, driving some other people to work as well. Or maybe I decide that on my way to work, I want to pick somebody up. And maybe the gentleman here decides that it's cheaper and easier for him to just jump in my car and pay me a little bit of money to get to work rather than using his own, right? So to extrapolate that one sort of anecdotal example, it's kind of like the slides that I presented earlier, right? Fundamentally, the demand for cars is simple. Now, a small element of it is having a car is cool. Like, it's cool to, you know, kind of, I love driving, right? Like, I also do, right? I understand it. But a big part of it is just necessity. You just need the damn thing to get from one place to another. And if we give people as many really awesome, usable, and pleasant alternatives as possible to get from one place to another, then they just won't need to have a car anymore. Now, it'll still be fun to drive, and certain people will still want to own vehicles, and we have no issue with that. But the more we decrease the need, the less cars there'll be on the road, and the less cars there are on the road, the less traffic jams. And just real quickly on the cultural question, which comes from Vincentis, which I thought was quite amusing, and you know, I hear you, but Lithuania is far from unique in this regard, right? I mean, car ownership is huge globally. We see about it in the U.S. The U.S., you know, Americans love sort of giant gas-guzzling vehicles and Hummers and pickup trucks. We hear about it in the press in China, how a rising China and you know, a developing economy has lifted millions out of poverty and created like the biggest auto industry in the world because now everybody wants a car, right? So Lithuania is far from unique. But I'll give you guys one example to think about, right? If you think back to the first half of the 20th century, and we think about the idea of what was then considered a housewife, right? This was a big cultural icon. You see it in TV shows like Mad Men from that era, for example, for those of us like me that don't actually remember it, right? The idea that you eat meals at home and the housewife prepares those meals, that's the culturally accepted norm. It's inconceivable, or it was inconceivable then, for a family to go out and to eat out. Like, this just wasn't a thing, right? Because I'm a launcher, I don't have a home, and I literally eat in cafes and restaurants 100% of my meals, right? 60, 70 years ago, this was inconceivable, right? Maybe you would eat out on a special occasion at a super expensive restaurant where the food wouldn't be as good as at home, and you certainly couldn't afford to do it regularly. And then in the 60s, McDonald's came along, right? And it democratized the idea of family restaurants, right? That's why McDonald's is a family restaurant. Some of you younger people in the room think of it as a place to eat after you get really drunk at 3 in the morning. But the original idea for McDonald's was it was a family restaurant, right? And I'm not going to say whether the advent of McDonald's is positive or negative. That's up to you guys to decide. But now we take for granted this cultural idea that we can just take our family and go to McDonald's or any number of other restaurants that sprung up since then 7 nights a week if we want. 50, 60 years ago, inconceivable, right? So what we need to do is we need to present people with an alternative that's positive and reliable and safe and pleasant to use, and soon enough, they'll start using it, and you know, cultural norms will change, right? Culture is fluid. So that's my answer.
I would compliment Alex, actually. This is one of the few cases when the more the better. More options you have, because the consumer should be able to decide. If he's willing to take a bike ride in normal spring, why not? If there's snow outside, let's take a car or a bus or a tram. If I want to take a walk, I don't need any of the services available if there's a short distance. So the more the better, and this way you would reduce the jams because of the options that are actually available to you. If you can't get city vehicle nearby, why not to use another option? Why not to take Uber and then just have a safe and reliable drive? Why not? And in terms of the cars, I guess it's really related that if the consumer has so many options and his own car is one of the options, so one day this person may decide not to drive to work because he's too tired to do so, or there's no parking lots available. So I think the one option solves the problem.
Marisa, we have a comment on future of transportation.
Yes, about traffic jams. We have now, in Vilnius, in 20 years, we have 6 times more vehicles, cars than we had in 1998 maybe, and our street network is the same. But one rule that how many we wide streets, we do not solve the problem because we will have more and more cars. And maybe 20 years we had a car policy because we all was done for cars, for more comfortable to have a car. And after social union, yes, we have Soviet Union, we have a social status to have a car now in Lithuania. I don't know, but in other cities, but in Lithuania is that. And it is very cool to have 3 cars in family, but it is not. It is very bad to go to the work by bicycle. It's not cool and it's not prestige now. But it is very good that the changing now. The behavior of citizens are changing, and they are understanding that that are other alternatives to go to the to go to the work, to go to the school, and to go to the shop. And these alternatives, as we mentioned or today, Uber, car sharing, bike sharing, and bike, we have all alternatives now, and they are changing our behaviors.
Okay, Lucas, you have a comment?
Okay, so the first question was about the traffic jams, right? So I believe that we need to understand that it's a huge shift happening right now from owning things to using services. So I believe that in 10 or 15 years there will not be such thing like own car if you live in a city center. You are probably it will be so convenient for you to use all these mobility services that you will not own a car. And as well, looking forward in the future, that we are creating the self-driving cars. So it's stupid to own a car which is self-driving and which is going to spend 90% of the time parked near at home or near your office, while you paid 100% of the value of it. And speaking about the cultural changes and Lithuanian habits, I would like to ask a question. How many of people in this auditory send text messages? Please raise your hands. Those who send text messages. It's probably 95% of the audience, while 5 years ago, it was a thing for the teenagers. Only teenagers send text messages here in Lithuania. So as well, I agree with Alex. And when I hear this saying like Lithuanians are not going to do this or not going to do that, they are not going to change the habit, I always show them an example of McDonald's. I mean, McDonald's is everywhere. And everybody is eating McDonald's. So it simply sticks. And if we provide people with a convenient service and economic incentive, then it's just a matter of time when you start using the service.
Okay, since I want to be on time, I thank you very much for excellent panelists. And yeah, for the closing statement, I think we all agree that Genie is out of the bottle. So that's great. I think what we have to think is how to make friends with her so she can fulfill our wishes. Thank you very much.